All right, so this is episode 2 where we're building a set of custom grips for a Ruger 1911. But before we start, I want to talk about one of the problems that we might encounter using a piece of highly figured wood. So one of the problems that we might encounter when we use one of these pieces of figured wood is that the grain is never perfectly aligned from top to bottom or down through the ring structure of the tree. So as much as we might like to slice through the blank and get consistent grain all the way through the blank from top to bottom, it's not likely to happen. In fact, oftentimes, as the figure goes down through the blank, it goes on a bias or on an angle. And sometimes it gets all jumbled up in there, and you're never going to get an exact replica of the first piece that you see as you work your way down through the blank of wood. So as I slice the flitches out of the blank on the bandsaw, I may have to take the pattern and shift it around a little bit in order to get one side of the panel or the left panel to look closer to the right panel. And it's just what we have to go through whenever we do any kind of veneer work or any kind of a book match or any kind of a left or right panel. So it is just the essence of woodworking. It is what you go through when you're trying to create art out of something that once was living material. So before I start cutting the slice or the flitch out of this blank of wood, I need to know how thick to make those slices. These are an actual set of Colt grips, and just using some dial calipers, I just measure across the overall thickness of this. And these are 275 thousandths. Well, I need to leave more than 275 thousandths because I have to be able to mill the flats. And I also have to shape that outside contour. But I have to be careful because, as we mentioned earlier, the further down into the blank that we go, the chances of distortion or the chances of the grain or the figure offsetting itself becomes greater. So even though I need to leave enough material to do the machining, I also need to make sure I don't get so far down the blank that second slice isn't even going to be usable because the book match is going to be so far off. So even though the grip is 275 thousandths, I think I'm going to make my slices around 350, 400 thousandths. And that should leave me enough material to do all the machining I need to do, but also hopefully doesn't get me down into an area of the blank that just doesn't match. So all I'm going to do is just set my calibers at 400 thousandths, and then just coming off that edge, I can just sort of use that as a scribe, and I can get a really pretty distinct line that I can follow on the bandsaw. So there's a couple things I need to worry about. First off is the blank of wood square to the table, and it is. And the second thing is the blade itself square to the table. In this case, I have to make a small adjustment because I want to make sure that slice is even all the way through the blank of wood. So give me a chance to adjust the table so that the blade and the table are square to one another. All right, so in this case, I'm using just the common machinist square. This is pretty precise and probably more precise than it really needs to be, but it'll get the job done. And as I said, the blank is already pretty square, so that way when I begin to make this slice down through the blank, I at least know that the thickness is going to be fairly consistent over the entire length of the blank. All right, so I have absolutely no intentions of trying to free cut this on the bandsaw. So what I've done is set up my fence. And using the fence, I can push the blank of wood through the bandsaw blade. And because I've marked it, I can see how the blade is tracking along that line that I marked. So depending on the bandsaw, many bandsaws have something called drift, and the blade will drift to the left or the blade will drift to the right. So in that case, you have to adjust the angle of your fence so that it compensates for that drift angle. So I've been fortunate. My bandsaw has very little, if any, drift. So I'm usually able just to set the fence up parallel to the blade, cut through it, and I can follow almost any line that I've marked out on a piece of wood. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I've got the two slices cut out of the blank, and I'm going to tell you they're absolutely gorgeous. But if you want to see what they look like, you're going to have to come back for episode 3. In episode 3, I'm going to lay out the templates and sort of pick out the best location, the best orientation of the template on the blank, and then we'll start the process of milling it so that it fits onto the grip frame of the 1911. So if you like this and want to see more of it, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.